The Objective. To deliver the NBA to you like no other. News. Play breakdowns. Power rankings. Storylines you never hear talked about. Anywhere else. It's all straight shots here. Fired by straight shooters. S and Gun. This is the Objective Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Objective Basketball Podcast. No Lauren. We'll be back, I promise you, on Friday. We will be back and ready and rocking and rolling, especially after the NBA draft. It is going to be hectic. We're going to have our Bleacher Report, podcast as well. The show that'll be live on there. You can tune into the Objective Basketball Podcast and listen to that as well. But ladies and gentlemen, get in the game and make your next bet with Sports Interaction. Bet before the game or live and play on all your favorite teams' matchups. Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN or download the app to get started. 19 plus, please play responsibly. Now, since we last spoke, there are a couple of things, a little bit of housekeeping, if you will. And I know most of you are probably tuning in to go and listen to the Andre Miller interview. We will get to that in just a second, but I want to talk about, something major that happened in the NBA in the Bradley Beal deal. Bradley Beal was traded to the Phoenix Suns in a so far two-team trade between the Washington Wizards and Phoenix Suns. Beal had his no-trade clause, so he essentially had full discretion to choose where and how he was getting traded, and that's exactly what went down with the Phoenix Suns. He ended up, it's crazy because he is now in a place with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, a supposed, big three, super team, whatever you might call it. But that's the team. The Phoenix Suns, outside of them plus DeAndre Ayton, they don't have much else on the roster. And they will be busy this summer trying to figure out what else they can do to be able to fill out the rest of the roster. I think that's the biggest challenge that comes with trading for a guy who you have to pay $60 million over the next 4 years. $60 million every year for the next 4 years, by the way. We'll start from the Suns' perspective because I want to talk about the Wizards a little bit later. But the Suns, you can look at this from two sides. You can say, okay, well, even before this trade, they were in a really, really tough spot financially. They had Chris Paul's contract, which was an expiring contract, $30 million. They had DeAndre Ayton. There aren't that many ways that they could maneuver, especially with the new CBA coming up and the second apron and all that stuff. It would have been tough for them to improve their roster in any type of tangible way, even if it meant trading Chris Paul, even if it meant waiving Chris Paul and signing another, non-taxpayer mid-level exception type of player. That wouldn't have tangibly improved their team. So from an asset management perspective, getting Bradley Beal, who is, at his best when he's in all-star form, when he's fully healthy, a top 20, 25 player in the NBA, acquiring that for, a 38-year-old Chris Paul, that's a huge win for the front office. I mean, yes, from an asset management, I hate saying that word, but from an asset management perspective, incredible deal. They did the right thing. That is the best upside trade they could have possibly gotten for Chris Paul, and they did that. From an on-court perspective, yeah, there's going to be tons of questions. I mentioned the depth issue that they have. They have to fill out the rest of their roster, and they don't have that much space money-wise to fill out the rest of their roster. So it'll be interesting to see what they do in free agency. But I think it will be interesting to see how Beal, Booker, and Durant work on the court. Booker presumably will be the point guard or playmaker, lead ball handler in that, trio. I think he has developed so much as that point guard, as we've seen throughout the last couple of seasons, and especially in the playoffs where he looked incredible against Denver. I wonder, though, Beal and Durant and even Booker at times, they sort of operate in similar spots of the floor, how they are able to work together. Obviously, Frank Vogel, new head coach, incorporating all of those things seems like it will be a tough task. And you don't know what's going to happen with Ayton yet. Maybe they decide to trade him, maybe they don't. But let's say they do run it back with this team. Ayton, Booker, Durant, Beal, and whoever, that's a lot of talent. That's a lot of offensive firepower. But you have a lot of questions at the point of attack defensively. How are you going to be able to get stops against teams? And I think that's really important when you're looking ahead to the playoffs and you have to face, hey, Nikola Jokic's Denver Nuggets or Steph Curry and the Warriors, et cetera, et cetera. I think That's the problems you come into from an on-court perspective. Asset management-wise, trade-wise, they really couldn't have done any better than this. A home run win. When you can acquire that much talent, you do it every single time. But from a on-court perspective, I need to see how the rest of the roster fills out before I say my full opinion. Right now, I'm not that high on it, and I'm more skeptical about the on-court fit than I am, from a asset management perspective. For the Washington Wizards, they ripped the Band-Aid off, ladies and gentlemen. It is done. They have stopped toiling in mediocrity. They've been doing it for the last 20 years, and they've decided no longer we are going to stink. We are going to be bad next year, and we might be bad the year after that. And the year after that, we are going to be bad for a very, very long time, because what we want to do is rebuild. Start this thing anew. No Bradley Beal. We'll see what happens with Kyle Kuzma and Kristaps Porzingis, who are potentially unrestricted free agents this summer. I imagine they move into a deep rebuild. What that means, what that pertains to, I'm not sure. Adrian Wojnarowski reported that they're looking to take on bad salary for draft picks. So obviously they're trying to recoup as many picks as possible. And, similar to OKC, similar to New Orleans, similar to, other teams that have built through a rebuild, they are in asset accumulation mode. Give us whatever we can to have this treasure chest, really, of just assets that we can use later down the road, whether it be for a star, another player, et cetera, et cetera. From the Wizards' perspective, you get Chris Paul's expiring salary. That's done. He probably gets traded somewhere else. I imagine he's probably a Clipper, which is funny given the fact that he was a Clipper earlier on in his career. But I think this is a win for the Wizards. Getting off of Bradley Beal's contract, getting off of the no-trade clause, and not having to pay a guy $200 million over the next 4 years, that's a win, a huge win for them. The details of the trade still aren't done, so whether they have incorporated Jordan Goodwin, who's a good two-way player for them, or Isaiah Todd, we'll see what happens there, and we'll probably get into the details on Friday when that thing actually becomes official. But so far, I probably like it for Washington and Phoenix. I just am questioning the on-court feel and look for the Suns. I think there are worlds, there are multiple universes where this is a smashing success, as British folks would say. But I still have questions, and I think those questions are fair. How are you going to look defensively? How does the depth look? Who ends up being the ball handler? How can those three guys occupy same spots of the floor? But those are things that you can work through in a 82 game regular season. So that's the Beal trade. Some other news that has came out is that Gary Trent Jr. is opting into his the final year of his contract. It's worth about $18.5 million. It also, Chris Haynes reported that he's looking to extend with Toronto, and they're looking to work on a long-term deal. I'll say that just from the Raptors' perspective, there are a couple of implications to this. Because now Gary Trent Jr. is technically back on the roster, he will be back for next season. He can either be traded this summer if they decide that they can't find, some kind of extension that's worthy, or he can be extended, and the cap hit for next season is only that $18.5 million. So it's not the extension money. It's not, if they were to pay him $20 million or $21 million or $22 million in his extension per year, it only is the $18.5 million that hits them next season. So from a cap flexibility standpoint, this is a win for the Raptors, because now you know how you have to manage your books with Fred VanVleet being an unrestricted free agent, with Jakob Poeltl being an unrestricted free agent. What number, what dollar value you are able to give both of those guys so that you are under the tax. And most likely, because of what we know Fred VanVleet is going to get in the open market and Jakob Poeltl, they probably won't be able to duck under the tax, which means that there's a trade coming. I imagine, I've said it before, but I really don't think that this Raptors team will, the front office and ownership isn't going to be willing to go into the tax. Under Masai Ujiri, the Raptors have gone over the tax one time, and it was the championship season. That's it. That's the one time they've gone over the tax. They haven't done it before for any other team, not the Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan days, not any of the Pascal days, none of that. So I really doubt they do it again, especially for a team that's not supposed to be a championship contender. So I imagine there's a trade that's coming. How big or small that trade is, who knows? Honestly, we don't know. Yes, maybe in 2 days, by the time, the NBA draft comes out, Pascal Siakam is traded. And now you have that, flexibility, if you will, to re-sign those guys, maybe retool your roster. Whoever is coming in from the Pascal trade, you can incorporate them, and hey, maybe you're under the tax that way. Maybe it's something smaller. Maybe it's, Chris Boucher or Otto Porter Jr. or Thad Young, who has a guaranteed date in about a week. Maybe it's maneuvering those type of things. So this Gary news is great news for the Raptors. And I also think it's great news for Gary, who his skill set will work well with their new coach, Darko Rajakovic. He works well in tandem with guys like Scotty Barnes and Pascal Siakam. And I think you're banking on a fairly young player who's 22, 23 years old to develop those tertiary skills, the off the bounce stuff, the, becoming even more potent of a 3-point shooter, maybe becoming more reliable and consistent as a defender. So I think you're banking on some sort of development, him improving. I don't know what exactly where he's at percentage wise of what his max ceiling is. Maybe he's already at 80% there and he has 20% of untapped potential. Maybe some people believe there's less potential there. I'm not sure exactly where you guys sit on Gary Trent, but regardless, it's good news for the Raptors. And I think it's good news for Gary Trent Jr. as well, because hey, he now has guaranteed money. He can sign on with Toronto long-term if he likes it here and if he wants to stay. Or, they can work towards moving him somewhere else that might want to extend him. So that's the Raptors news. That's the Suns Beal news. I know a lot of you guys were looking for me and Lauren to do a mock draft, some kind of draft content before the NBA draft. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do that. We will have you on Friday, though, recapping everything that happens on draft night. We will recap it for you guys. I am trying to get a couple of really cool guests to come on Friday to talk on the podcast. That should be great. Obviously, we have the Bleacher Report show that you can tap into as well. You can follow us on social media to be aware of that. But this right now, I want to throw to, it was a privilege for me to interview a player that I watched growing up. A guy that I try to mold my game around when I was playing on the courts. He just had such an incredible feel for the game. He's one of the most underrated point guards of a generation that I grew up watching when I was a kid. This is Andre Miller, Denver Nuggets legend, Philadelphia 76ers legend, Portland Trailblazers legend, NBA legend, if you will, Andre Miller. So please enjoy this interview. And yes, thank you for tuning into the Objective Basketball Podcast as always. We will see you guys after the draft. All right, we are joined by genuinely one of my favorite players ever. All time, one of my favorite players ever. This is a man who has played 17 years of professional basketball, all in the NBA. One of the Iron Men, legends, Iron Men. Played for multiple franchises, but he is most known for being one of the most resilient and most profound guards of his generation. Genuinely one of the best point guards when it came to a generation that had a ton of great talent. Mr. Andre Miller. Andre, how you doing, man?
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I wanted to ask you, I guess I'll start off with this because, you spent some time playing with the Denver Nuggets. You had a few years, 2 different stints actually with the Nuggets, and now you're part of the coaching staff and part of the organization. How did it feel for you to see Denver get to that point, knowing you've been a part of some special teams yourself?
Man, it was an exciting time for the Nuggets. It was some great teams that I played on, a very competitive conference when I played, and just to see how the organization is stuck with, the motto of putting a good product out there to compete.
Right.
And not just for the playoffs, but, deeper into the playoffs, into a championship run. And, the bubble was a great sign for what led up to right now. And I'm just happy for the franchise. I still have friends in Denver, Colorado. And, of course, management has changed, but the ownership is still there and they're still committed to winning. And, the last 3 or 4 years for the franchise, for the ownership has been very good. You win football, then you do hockey, and now basketball. So it's an exciting time, and congratulations to the ownership for the Denver Nuggets.
I'm assuming you watched the games. I'm assuming you caught up and checked out some of the finals and playoff games.
Yeah, I caught about 5 or 6 games, just going back and forth to Denver just to, embrace the environment. Of course, I was able to play in some playoff series in that arena, and but never was able to get out to the second round. And I was on some really good teams, but just to see the environment, to see the vibe around the city, and see how the team was playing well, and they just put on a nice run, and capped it off with a championship. So much props to the organization.
You sort of mentioned that you've been a part of some really, really special teams, and hey, regardless of making it out of the first round with those Nuggets teams, I mean, you guys had some crazy competition, especially in your second stint in Denver, where you guys faced the Warriors. You had that classic game winner that everybody remembers. I guess that was sort of the beginning of this run for a lot of people, because the semblances of the team was there, right? You have certain things that started back then that are seeing fruition now. I mean, it was 10 years ago, 2013 to the date almost, that playoff run that you guys had against the Warriors happened. So for your own sake, like, do you see this transition? Do you see Denver becoming more of a basketball city? Is this a thing? Because I know it's always Bronco Nation, but
yeah,
do you see Denver becoming a more popular basketball place?
I do, just because the organization, management has found a formula, what it takes to put a team together. With the scouting department, and how they recruit players, how they mix the younger guys with veterans who I believe, you always have to have a couple veterans on the team that are high character. And, I think the formula is there, and it's just all about building and being ahead of the game, as far as, staying on top of how the league is transitioning and adjusting. But you just gotta, have good staff and people to put something together and be ahead of the game. So I think the Nuggets do have a formula, and hopefully it continues to flow like that.
I mentioned earlier that you're a 17-year vet, so you've seen the growth of the game. You started in 1999, finished off your career in 2016. Lots of basketball, right? And you've seen the game grow in that time, and now you're seeing it as a coach. I guess I wanted to ask you, because you've obviously watched, how much does it amaze you that there is a big guy like Jokic doing what he's doing, making the plays, being the playmaker for a team?
You know what? I mean, what that guy has done has been probably one of the most historic things that a player can do in this league. Coming from where he comes from, the transition to the American game,
Yeah.
His work ethic, his competitiveness, and it's kind of like a breath of fresh air, because you see players come in the league, and they take the game for granted. I know all the players, are fully committed, but it's just some players that just, stick out in my mind, as far as, they want to maximize their time while they're in the NBA. And Joker has showed that. He showed it with his work ethic. He's a leader. He leads by example, and everybody follows. So, it's a good feeling for an ex-player to see that you have guys that have that type of work ethic, that not just want to be in the NBA, they want to be great.
Right.
They want to be great. So when you have a guy like that leads by example, it makes the coach's staff and everybody else's job a lot easier.
I am very, very interested to see what you think of Jokic, just by the way he creates advantages on the court. He's not necessarily the quickest player. He's not the fastest player. And I think in a lot of ways, some people may say that even though you guys play different positions, there's a similarity to the way you guys created advantages, despite not having the quickest or burstiest of steps. How do you, I guess in general, how is it, do you think from your perspective, Jokic, yourself, whoever you've seen throughout your career, to carve up defenders and create advantages, by still playing the pace that you'd like to play?
I mean, our games are very similar, just in different positions.
Yeah.
He's a center and I was a point guard. And one thing that I do like about, him as a basketball player, again, is just making everybody around him better. And when you hear, like, I used to be offended when people say, you know what, he's not fast, he's not athletic.
I know you could get up there though. You
You know,
could get up
I
there.
would be offended, and I could tell you, like, over half the time I felt like I was more athletic than half the point guards that I played against.
Yeah,
It
right.
was just something that stuck with you. But, I got a chance to watch this big fella move around, and he moves well.
Yeah.
He moves very well. He moves he's more athletic than you think. He's faster than you think. He's stronger than you think. So, it's just with the eyes, you're looking at a TV and you see this big guy who, you used to seeing a guy that big be a stiff, a
Right.
guy that can't move around, but he moves just as good or probably better than any other big in the league. And it's just a perception, and it's something for everybody to talk about. He is
Yeah.
definitely, if he needs to get up there and dunk on somebody, he will. But, if he needs to go out there and score 40, 50 points, he will. But that's just not his mentality. He plays the game simple. And the attractive thing that makes it unique is that he's a center. So, that makes it fun to watch.
It's funny because what you just described in a lot of ways does remind me of what your game is. Like you mentioned, some people may not think it's the fastest, the quickest, but you were able to get fast and quick and make great decisions, be a guy who can read the floor really, really well, a guy that a lot of players wanted to play with. And I think Jokic has similar skill set in that. You're currently 12th all time in NBA history in assists. Jokic, I'm sure, is on his way up there. But what allowed you in your career to be such a profound playmaker? What was the thing that you worked on maybe when you were a kid or when you were at the parks? Like what was the thing that helped you become such a prolific playmaker?
I mean, number one, you for me, it was being a student of the game and watching the players who came before me, the discipline, the hard work, and those guys being students of the game. And you can't lose sight of that because that's what drives the NBA.
Right.
And to see guys that take that for granted, number one, and I tell a lot of kids this game is a team game. There's 5 guys on the court, and then you have the bench guys and you have a coaching staff. So you have to be disciplined and you have to be unselfish. And a lot of players feel that, oh, well, if I go get my 20, 25 points, 10 rebounds or whatever, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna be a superstar. And it doesn't work like that. And in this league, what the players have to understand, players that want to have longevity, is there's only going to be a couple stars on every team, and everybody else has to fulfill a role. So when you want to try to go into a gym and start training and going into what you call your bag and trying to add all this stuff to the game, you're not going to be allowed to do that on the basketball court because that's for the stars. Everybody else has to fulfill a role. And I don't want players to lose sight of that. It's just the business of the game, but this is a team sport. And being a student of the game and being unselfish, and the etiquette is, hey, you have a good attitude, and you never know who you might cross or who might want to help you out. And maybe you might not be as talented, but maybe a coach wants you on the team because you bring good vibes and good energy to the locker room.
Right.
And that could get you 4 or 5 years in the NBA right there. Play your cards right. So, that's how I see it in a nutshell.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. You mentioned sort of learning the game, teaching the game, understanding what came before you. And I think it's very interesting because you've had such a lengthy career as a professional that you've also seen the evolution of the point guard, right? You've seen how much it's changed throughout your time and even after your time. Looking at guys like a Jamal Murray, who we just talked about with the Nuggets, or Steph Curry, all those guys out there. What do you think is the massive difference between, the guys that you may have played against in 1999 and the Marburys and the Kids and what those guys compared to, some of the guards that you see today?
I think the biggest difference is the shooting. You know what I'm saying? I mean, There's also a big mental part of it, but, the amount of time that these guys put in the gym in the off season, like if I put that much time in the gym in the off season, I probably will be averaging maybe 50 to 55 games a season. And that's what you see, guys playing somewhere from 50 to 60 games during the season because their career is year round.
Right.
Their career is year round. So they're doing a lot of training. But, the shooting is a big difference. I think, the overall, I'll still take our generation over this generation, just because of the mental part and the mental toughness and stuff that we had to deal with,
right.
Back then as NBA players. But there's nothing against those guys. I mean, they have taken the game to a great level. Lillard, Curry, Clay, all those guys, man. I mean, the shooting, you can't even play basketball anymore if you can't shoot the ball. Right. So you won't touch a court. I mean, when you go in the gym, okay, we don't care if you jump. We don't care if you run. Right? We just want you to stand there, and I want to see you make, out of 100 shots, I want to see you make 80 to 85 of them.
Right. Yeah.
And it's almost like, in the NFL, you don't have to have a lot of talent, but if you go run 40-yard dash in 4.2 seconds, we got to have this guy on the team just because he ran that 40-yard dash that fast. So that's how it is in the NBA. It's a lot shooting. You got to have shooting in today's age.
Okay, so actually, two questions that popped up from that because I'm interested now. How do you think your game would have looked today if you were playing at your prime in 2023? How do you think your game would look playing?
I think my game would be the same, and I think I would probably average more points just because when we played, and I hate to say when we played, but, you shot the three-pointer when, you was open, or, right. The rhythm of the game got you got you to that point, and you're like, okay, I'm shooting this, I made a couple or something like that. But, it was more, you get the ball to the specialists, the guys that shoot the three-pointers. Now, everybody's shooting three-pointers. I'm like, and there's no repercussions.
Right.
So, and let me go out in the game back then and shoot about 4 or 5 three-pointers and miss all 4 or 5 of them. Most likely that's my night for the day. It's over. Andre had a bad game, but, in this generation, you got forwards and centers shooting 7 and 8 three-pointers a game, and they not making them at a high clip. And there's no repercussions for it. So a guy missed 5 or 6 three-pointers, coach not going to take him out. He's going to say, keep shooting.
Right.
They keep shooting because that's what they preach. The more three-pointers that you can shoot, the more opportunity we have to win the game, even if you miss them.
It's a numbers game now, right? It's a math problem versus Look, I actually am curious about another part of this too. Now that you mentioned it, you're obviously on the coaching side of things now. And you've transitioned into coaching recently, but you mentioned that the off season is now like another season for these guys training wise, and they're only playing 55, 60 games. You're a guy who barely missed any games in your amount of time playing, a long amount of time playing. How is that mentally adjusting to coaching players that it's a different generation now? You have to approach coaching a little bit differently than, how you may have been coached when you were younger.
It's hard to accept, because to me, basketball is a commitment thing. Mm-hmm. And, I had no other extracurricular activities going on that would really interfere with basketball. And again, like I say, when I played, if you had anything extracurricular going on, it was like you're not 100% committed.
Right.
And now you see, guys, working out all through the summer. And let's get one thing straight. This lifestyle, that lifestyle is not normal. Mm-hmm. You're playing basketball, you're flying to different cities, you're eating in the middle of the night, you're partying, you're trying to get everything in and go out there and be productive. Right. And it's very hard to manage if you don't have your priorities straight. So, just the commitment, that's what I would like to see more out of the players, more commitment, more competitiveness. And it's easy to wake up and say, you know what, I'm not feeling it today.
Right.
But in order to be on that level, on the NBA level, and all those guys are superstars, the reason why you separate yourself is because you're competitive and you want to compete. So why would you throw all that away? And you know what? I'm only going to play 50, 55 games. Or, something's going on at home right now. Well, nobody cares about that. Well, now in this new generation, you got the mental health, you got small injuries that guys like, I'm not 100%. I'm not feeling it today. And I think that part of it is selfish, and at some point it hurts the game. So, that part of it really needs to be corrected.
How many times in your career did you play hurt?
A lot.
Countless, right?
I mean, the hurt, not just physically. I mean, all these guys' minds are hurting. So, you hurt physically and you hurt mentally. And sometimes it's more mental, where you're beating yourself up over minutes, or,
right.
am I gonna get this contract? It's family issues, all the off-court activities. That's the mental part of it. And the guys that survive figure out how to separate those things and manage it and be able to go out. 50, 55 games is nothing. It's nothing. And those guys don't practice anymore. So, you have to be fully committed, and you want to be out there and be, relied upon. And that's very important for success, to be able to have the coach trust you, to the point where, oh, okay, I can look down at the bench and say, you know what, I'm gonna put this guy in the game because I trust him.
Right. What made you, because I know you're such a fierce competitor, you're a guy that's going to commit to anything 100%. What made you get into coaching?
I got into the coaching part, almost kind of accidentally, but, just it's all I know.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much all I know. Like I said, 100% of my time was invested in two things: family and basketball.
Right.
So, I have a couple other hobbies, but, those never got into the way of basketball. So I felt like it was an obligation to give back and share the things that I learned from the time that I was growing up and watching the Magic Johnsons play the Larry Birds, and, the Fat Levers, and and the Alex Englishes and the Michael Jordans. That was how we grew up. So the need to give back, the want to give back, and I felt like it's an obligation. So, it's something that I care about, and, I'm learning as I go.
Of course. You've this season you got to coach two guys who are on the Nuggets right now, Colin Gillespie, Jack White. They've won a ring, technically. I guess, how has it been seeing those guys develop, and then now seeing them with the Nuggets being able to celebrate with the parade and whatnot?
Well, you know what, man, it was good to see those young guys, number one, be around that environment, because they're learning work ethic. They're learning what it takes to become a pro. They're developing a championship mentality. Right. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, I never made it that far. So these guys can say, when they grew up and look at their kids, hey, we had a parade, we won a championship, here's my championship ring. And, those three guys, along Peyton Watson, Jack White, Colin. I didn't really get a chance to see Colin this year because he had broke his leg before we even started. So I dealt with Peyton and Jack a lot. But, for those guys, that was big for them. And it's a big summer for them. You don't go into the summer to relax when you're young. You're going into the summer to say, how am I going to get better? Mm-hmm. How I'm going to get a lot of shots up. I'm going to lift my weights, and I'm going to go into camp and make a statement and show the coach, you know what? I'm going to be on the court. I don't want to be in the G League. I want to be on the NBA floor playing and contributing on the NBA level, like a Christian Braun.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, it's good for those guys. I'm happy for them.
A lot of people are excited about Peyton Watson. I speak to a lot of Nuggets fans, a lot of Nuggets media. They're excited for what kind of step he can take. What did you see from him this year that can he potentially take that next step into the rotation next year?
You know what? I mean, Peyton, he's a long kid. You know what I'm saying? He's very tall. He's very athletic. He's fast. And, he did 1 year at UCLA, so it's going to take some time. But, he checks the most important box.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important box is he plays hard. And I would give him that. I could nitpick and pick him out, pick him down and break him down. But, all a coach and all another player, a peer wants to see that, what, when this kid, he might make some mistakes and this and that, but he plays hard.
Mm-hmm.
He plays hard. So that's what I was excited about working with him. I didn't have to say, hey, man, you need to play hard. I never had to say that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Him and Jack, those guys came out and competed and they wanted it. And that's what I liked about those two guys.
So you're saying Nuggets fans should be excited next season for that guy to get some playing time?
Basically, like Peyton and Jack White, both of those guys have a competitive mean streak like the Christian Braun kid that was drafted.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Those guys are going to get out and play hard. The thing about Christian Braun is you don't see a lot of mistakes that he's making out there, on the defensive end.
Right.
He might make a couple little mistakes, but the coach trusts him.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why he trusts him is because the kid doesn't make a lot of mistakes and he plays hard. So I was happy that the guys that I had to deal with, Peyton and Jack, got a chance to see a youngster that their age get out there and contribute on a championship team.
Is the eventual goal for you to end up coaching in the NBA? Is that to move up, or is this just something that you're experimenting and trying with?
Well, I haven't set any goals yet.
Okay.
It's one day at a time, because you never know what can happen. You know what I'm saying? My thing is to keep my options open, stay in the moment. At first I was skeptical about the G League, but it was an opportunity to get some coaching experience.
Right.
The G League is very competitive. A lot of good players that have dreams of playing on that next level, but for some way and form, the NBA got guaranteed contracts. So that's the politics, the business part of it. But my first year was a lot of ups and downs, but I enjoyed being out there, communicating with the players, meeting other people that are trying to work their way through, the basketball world and figure it out. So, I have fun. And I was learning.
Now, I needed to ask this because I wasn't exactly sure if it lined up, but Michael Malone coached Sacramento the same year you were in Sacramento, but I'm not sure if you were being coached by him at the same time. Is that true? Were you being coached?
You know what? I had, I think I got traded to Sacramento from Washington, I think like
Midway.
February 2014 or 2014 or 15. I want to say 15. So I was only there a couple months. And the coach there at the time was George Karl.
Right. Okay.
So George Karl was there. I think Malone was right before him. I believe. I'm not sure. Either Malone or Corbin. I'm not sure. But I was only there for like February, March, and April.
Have you guys had a chance to interact or talk by any chance?
We've just, I've been to about 2 or 3 training camps with the Nuggets, just because they have training camp here in San Diego where I'm at. So,
right.
I was able to go and, had some words with him, spoke with him, and, just congratulate him on, his success as a coach. And, at the same time, I'm watching him. I'm learning,
right.
How he carries himself as a coach, how he interacts with the players, when to push them, when not to push them, practice etiquette, coaching etiquette, all those things. I'm not just being a student of the game anymore on that. I'm being a student from coaches now. You know what I'm saying? Paying attention more to the coaches than I did the players.
Right. Well, look at the beginning you said you guys never made it out of the first round with Denver, but for me, for people who watch you guys, those Nuggets teams laid the foundation for some really, really fun basketball. You, Melo, Kmart, JR, like it was really, really entertaining basketball, man. It was high level stuff. You guys were high octane offensively. And it really paved the way. Even that second stint with you guys and Iguodala and Ty Lawson and all those guys. Do you feel any type of emotional connection to that parade and seeing the city of Denver, be embracing the moment and all that stuff, and the coach talking the way he is? Do you feel any connection, regardless of how things kind of shook out with you in your own career?
Honestly, I don't.
Okay.
I'm very happy for the franchise. This is where I played my most years. I think I played 6.5 years with the Nuggets, and, the history of the franchise. And, that's almost a 10-year gap.
Yeah.
From when I played to when they won the championship, the last time I played for the Nuggets. And I'm just appreciative of the opportunity, given to me to represent the Nuggets and the Grand Rapids Gold, and entrusting to me trying to build character and teach these young guys how to be professional basketball players, and that's the main thing. So, it's kind of a disconnect, but I am still happy for the organization and for the players, because it is very, very hard, and everything has to click a certain way for a team to win a championship.
Right.
And, kudos to the management, Tim Connolly, who was there previously, Calvin Booth, who's taken over, and just the leadership of the Kroenke family that's been A1 and all about committed to winning a championship, and they got it done.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to spend some time just doing some quick hitter questions about your career, just to see, you can answer them as fast or as long as you want. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Carmelo just recently retired. You were there for his rookie season in Denver. I mean, just seeing him retiring and seeing, being there for almost all of his journey, really, seeing at the beginning and now at the end. How does that feel for you, seeing him retire?
Man, I was happy to see him, walk away, and he's given so much to the game. You know what I'm saying? If it wasn't for LeBron, you might be saying that Carmelo was probably the best in that class and kind of helped carry the NBA for a little bit. But I mean, for him to come in with LeBron and do the things that he did, he was a great teammate for me. He made my job easier because he was a scorer. All I had to do was pass him the ball when he cherry picked out on fast break, So, but man, super cool dude, man, and his work ethic is unreal, and we just had a good group of guys, man. I wish, we could have won a championship, but we were young, man. We were young, and we were very talented. But I mean, you're looking at, the first 10 years of my career, I mean, nobody wasn't going to win the championship because it was Lakers and San Antonio.
Yeah.
I'm saying, so they was eating up the championships, but I was just happy to be on the floor with a guy like Carmelo, because, you knew you had a chance when he was out there.
He was part of your decision to sign with Denver, right?
He was the reason why I signed in Denver. You know what I'm saying? I was a free agent, restricted free agent with the Clippers, and I paid attention to the draft, and I'm like, okay, the Nuggets got Carmelo Anthony, and it pretty much came down between the Denver Nuggets and the Utah Jazz. So I went with okay, I want to play with a young budding superstar because he had just won a championship versus, maybe I had an opportunity to go to Utah, right, and play under Jerry Sloan, and that would have been a dream come true. It was either or, so I think it turned out for the best.
Do you think Denver should retire Carmelo's jersey? Because him and Jokic wear the same number, 15-15. Do you think they should retire Carmelo's jersey?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what he did for the city, what he did for the franchise. I mean, you got the greats that have come through there, Mutombo,
yep,
Fat Lever, Alex English. I mean, the list goes on, and it's not just scores. It's guys that have contributed and put their bodies on the line for the Denver organization, and for the Nuggets to acknowledge Carmelo. I mean, he was one of the biggest reasons why the organizations started to turn around and finally got some respect.
Absolutely.
To go from a team that was last in the league to making the playoffs the next year. It was tremendous. So yeah, he definitely has to put his jersey. They can put 215s up there. It's okay.
I agree. And there's other teams that have done that, by the way. The Knicks have two different numbers, but like the same number retired. It's possible. Like that is something that a franchise can do, retiring 2 jerseys, same number. You mentioned earlier that you were coached by George Karl, different instances. He has been, there's been like different moods with George Karl. A lot of people either hate him or you love him. How was your experience being coached by a guy like George Karl?
George is a great basketball mind,
Right.
so I had an understanding about him before I even got to the NBA because he was close with my college coach, Rick Majerus.
Gotcha.
And so I kind of knew his personality a little bit. I actually just got off the phone with his son, Kobe,
Right.
like about 30 minutes ago before we even got on this Zoom. But, we had our ups and downs. We had our ups and downs with George. We had, some great teams. Sometimes it felt kind of overworked, but George was fully committed to winning,
Mm-hmm.
and, you don't have to like his teaching. I mean, you don't have to like, certain things. He had to do a job. George Karl had to do a job, and he didn't care about, feelings getting in the way because he was about winning.
Right.
And if you put your feelings into the business of basketball, as far as, getting upset because of this or because of that, or maybe the mind games and stuff like that, you just can't allow those things to affect you. And sometimes it did affect us because we were young, but he had a job to do. So I respect that. Early on I was like, but I love George Karl, man. He's a guy that went into the Hall of Fame. So
Yep.
He's been around a long time, and I've been following him ever since I was little. So I definitely have a ton of respect for him.
So I heard on a podcast that the LeBron James story, the story about you telling him to stick to college, go to college, get yourself an education, and instead, obviously, he doesn't go to college. He goes straight to the NBA, gets drafted #1 overall. 20 years later, he's gonna be one of the oldest NBA players ever at some point. Joining you as one of the players to be one of the oldest players playing in the NBA. How does that feel, knowing full circle? Like, hey, 20 years ago, you were there telling the guy to skip college or not, go to college.
And for me, man, it was a blessing
Mm-hmm.
to play in the NBA. To me, that experience playing in the NBA was a dream. It wasn't real. Nothing that I experienced in the NBA, it wasn't real to me. I lived out a dream. And, early on back then, before LeBron came out, and when I met him when he was a junior in high school, I didn't know. I was right there in Cleveland. I didn't know who LeBron James was because I was dreaming. I was in a dream. I was playing in the NBA. I had time to be coming out of my dream to be worried about a junior in high school. You know what I'm saying? So, the dream became a reality, when I did see him and said those words to him, and then my agent was, oh, you might as well just ask for a trade. You know what I'm saying? And that's when the dream disappeared.
Right.
Because I could have possibly won some championships playing with LeBron, but it was almost like a business move.
Right.
A business that I had no clue about. You know what I'm saying? So I let other people kind of influence my decision to move on from Cleveland, but I lived a dream. That's neither here or there, man. I lived a dream. I got the most out of my body. I got a chance to play against the greatest players in the world, and it was a blessing.
You pioneered the quarterback pass, which is the full court pass, all the way top. There's a big man ceiling in the post down low or a lob pass, whatever. Where did you get that from? Did you just, hey, is it just intuition, or did you pick that up from another player?
I think if you talk to a lot of guys from my generation and you ask them who their favorite players that were growing up, you hear Magic Johnson, you hear Larry Bird, you hear Michael Jordan, you hear Scottie Pippen, you hear Reggie Miller, all the greats, Mark Jackson, to me, Gary Payton. When you think of those guys and why the game flourished when we came in, because we were all students of the game.
Right.
And all those guys that played basketball back then, at least for me, when I watched guys play basketball back then, to me, they were all unselfish. They all played team basketball. They all kept the game simple. And the ball just always found the superstars' hands. The players knew who the superstars was, and they deferred. And it was all about respect and playing the game the right way. And I think that's why our generation flourished, not just talent-wise, but mentally and physically, toughness, because of what we saw and what we copied.
Mm-hmm.
Now you move forward. Now this new generation is creating their own dialogue and their own basketball game, which is great, and there's still some students of the game out there, but these youngsters are creating their own narrative when it comes to that basketball.
Right. You've had a lot of career highlights. I mean, you go on YouTube, you search up Andre Miller highlights, and there's tons, man, everywhere. Whether it be the passing, the game winners, there's the 52-point game against the Mavs. What's your own personal favorite career moment? Might be tough to make it one. You're right.
My personal career moment is probably like the draft process.
Really?
Just the process of going through the draft. I mean, all the other stuff was a dream, playing against the greatest players in the world, but how much of it was a big deal? Like it didn't become a big deal till I actually stepped on the court.
Mm-hmm.
But the process leading up to it, I think that was probably, the most important and most memorable thing, to go to different cities, visit teams,
right,
do these interviews. I don't even know if it was a job interview. It was maybe like a psychological interview to see if you got any sense.
Mm-hmm.
You got any basketball sense? Are you normal? Just a fill out process. So that whole process going through the draft, I think, was the biggest moment for me.
What would be a piece? I mean, the draft is coming up next week. What would be a piece of advice you would give to someone going through that process right now?
Enjoy it. Stay in the moment. Because, a lot of these youngsters, I don't know why guys turn down workouts.
Right.
Like, I'm only going to do this workout, and I'm only going to do that workout. And now the NBA workouts have become like the NFL. Like, guys not going to go to the combine. Oh, we'll just host an individual workout, like a pro day, mm-hmm. like how they do for football. So, I like to see those guys get as many workouts and get evaluated by as many people as they can, because, it helps spread the game. The more people you can find out that can play the game and, give guys another opportunity or a chance to go out there and prove themselves. I mean, you'll find some hidden gems like a Joker. You'll find some hidden gems like a Joker all the way in a different country, and somebody make a call. Oh, it's this big kid over here. Oh, next thing you know, he's in the draft. So, I mean, it's global. It's global.
Absolutely. So I wanted to bring up a specific moment. You hit the game winner against the Warriors 2013 or 2014 playoffs. I can't remember exactly what it was. I believe it was 2013. Mm-hmm. And that was around the same time that they started to climb up the ranks.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys see that when you were playing them? Did you see that they might be next up?
Well, I felt, if we look back at that series, mm-hmm. Gallinari had tore his ACL right before the playoffs started.
Yeah.
And out of all the teams, I played on some good teams. The other Nuggets teams were Carmelo and Nene and Kenyon. Those teams were really good, but, you got Lakers and San Antonio. But that team where we won 57 games and, we had a good roster. We had a great roster. And that was one of the times that I felt, you know what? If we're healthy, we can make it to the Western Conference Finals, and then Gallinari get hurt right before the playoffs. And
right.
Once we stepped on that court against the Warriors, I mean, Draymond Green wasn't even playing, and then he got his opportunity when David Lee, I believe, hurt his hip. And that's when I knew, when Draymond Green stepped on the court and I saw how the ball was going in the basket a little bit different. The way that ball was going through the basket when Curry and Klay Thompson, the way they was moving,
yeah,
it was something different. It wasn't normal. It was like something was in the air, and I was almost like, you know what? I got a couple years left because this is about to get bad. This is about to get real bad, and it's something in the sky that's making this ball go through the rim like that. So I saw it coming. It wasn't normal that a guy that's my size, not strong, but when I tell you, when that ball leaves his fingers, he could probably shoot the ball from my house into a basket somewhere, and I was there. You know what? I saw it. So great player, and I'm just happy to see the success of those guys and what they've done for the league and for themselves and the NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. I want you to know, man, you've become a myth, if you will, a lore in the NBA conversations, in the sense that every time someone is playing and pick up, you see someone in runs or whatever, they'll be like, oh, he kind of plays like Andre Miller. This guy, he kind of plays like Andre Miller. You have left a lasting legacy. No question. On the game of basketball, you have left that there, at least for my generation. We grew up watching you guys, right? Like how you said you watched Magic and you watched Isaiah. For us, it was you guys that we were watching, and you left a lasting legacy. Does that mean anything for you?
It does. It does for all the ex-basketball players, high school, college basketball players that go on to be all-stars in the YMCA league and the 35 and 40-year-old league. You catch the guy walking through the Walmart or a grocery store. Oh, man, I used to pattern my game, man. You turn your butt in, man, the post game, and man, because it's relatable. Yeah. It's relatable, guys that you look at and you're like, man, how can he do that? Because I could do the same thing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's just, so it's always going to be a kid's game, and that's the way that I kept it. I played the game the exact way that I saw it growing up. You know what I'm saying? I put a little twist in it by adding stuff to my game to get me through the NBA, but everything that I did was based on, taking something from every player that I liked, I didn't even have to like him. I might have saw Mark Aguirre, the way he dribble and shoot his free throw or something more.
Right.
Patrick Ewing, how he shoot his fadeaway. I'm not a center. Right. You know what I'm saying? Or I might have saw how Larry Bird did a pass, and and everything with Magic Johnson was like, everything that he did in my eyes was magical. It was nothing that he couldn't do. Like, okay, how did he do that? So my game is relatable to everybody out there that just goes out there and plays basketball and try to play it the right way.
I love it, man. I love it. Andre, man, wishing you nothing but success. Whether it be coaching, whether it be doing whatever, skating. I know you're a big skater. So wishing you nothing but success, man. Thank you so much
Thank you very much for having me.
Follow hosts at Just S Baraheni on all socials and at The Lauren Gunn on Twitter. The Objective Basketball Podcast, delivering the NBA